was one of the few and the proud. But this soldier died a horrible death on a military drill in the Mojave Desert when somehow he was left behind by his fellow Marines.
It's just out of the order of things. A son is not supposed to die at 19.
It's almost the unthinkable act.
Tonight, on a special evening, how the disappearance of Jason Rother led to tragedy for his family, his friends, and the Marines. Now here are Donna and Steve.
Arlington National Cemetery is the final resting place for over 200,000 military personnel. For the families of the people who were buried here, it offers the recognition of an honorable life and the comfort of an honorable burial place.
But the family of 19-year-old Marine Jason Rother was denied that peace of mind. Somehow, Jason was left behind while on a training maneuver with the Marines in the middle of the desert, and that led to a 5-month nightmare for his family. California's Mojave Desert, brutally hot, endless, and deadly.
This has been hell, pure hell. You ate it, you slept it, you talked it, you walked it, you worked it.
In the heat of August last year, Jason Rother was out here on a military drill. Somehow, he was left behind.
It just goes against the traditions of the Marine Corps to think that something like this can happen. It's almost the unthinkable act.
Over 3 months later, Jason's bones were found on this spot, finally allowing the family to put to rest their hope, torment, and their eldest son.
It's just out of the order of things. A son is not supposed to die at 19.
As a boy growing up in Minneapolis, Cecilia knew her son had the gift to make people laugh.
He's a little Dickens. He would go out in the backyard to take out the garbage and howl at the moon, and the neighbors are wondering what lives next door here, you know.
There was no shortage of love in Jason's household, despite coming from a divorced home. With his young fiancée, Amy, Uncle Kevin, Grandma Rose, and Brother Bob, he was surrounded by it.
And that was my boy. I was very close to him.
He was always there for me, for anybody. That's just the way he was.
I wanted to be like Jason. That's all.
To help pay for college, Jason joined the Marines. His father, Jeff, always saw that desire to follow family tradition.
If the guys are going to go in the military, they are going to go in the Marines. There's just no question about it. And Jay had been looking forward to that for a long time.
Just 1 year into his military career, Jason was involved in a live ammunition drill deep in the Mojave Desert. It was the end of a 3-day exercise, and according to Colonel Fred Peck, the troops were weary, and it was late at night. It was to be the last time Jason was ever seen alive.
For some reason or other, Jason was not picked up.
I always felt, when the boys were in, Uncle Sam's got them, I know where they are.
But there was some confusion and there were split responsibilities.
You expect to lose a son in a war.
Yeah, but not in peacetime.
Jason is the only one who could probably tell us why he was not picked up, but he was left out there.
But there's no way, when he said he was going out to desert training, that I expected to lose him.
And then we had what the investigation determined was a total breakdown in the personnel reporting chain, so that his absence wasn't noticed for almost 2 days.
But 2 days was probably too late. By the time the Marines contacted Cecilia to tell her Jason was missing, that he may have gone AWOL, Jason had almost definitely already died.
I felt that there was something very wrong. Knowing Jason as I did, I knew he could not have left there and not gotten in touch with me.
This began for Jason's family an odyssey of despair and horror, multiplied by the agony of simply not knowing if their son was dead or alive.
Not everybody was willing to accept that Jason was dead. Although I felt in my heart that he was.
Jason didn't make it, but his will to survive was just staggering. He trekked over 17 miles with ground temperatures soaring to as high as 180 degrees. Experts say most men couldn't survive more than 9. Jason continued straight off the military base, drawn by the distant headlights of old Route 66.
This poor little boy was trying to get someplace where he could have somebody help him out, and struggling and fighting and determination, I'm going to get there. And this heat is just pouring on him.
Jason struggled against the elements, but nature won. His final battle was over. He could go no further. 4 months later, 3 search parties later, his remains were found.
It was a relief in a way because we knew where he was. You know, that he wasn't going to be left out there forever. It was still very hard to accept.
There was one final irony. Jason collapsed only 6/10 of a mile from the train tracks and the highway.
It closed a chapter in the book. It didn't close the book. The book will remain open until the day I die.
Coming up, the long ordeal for Jason's family.
Amazing that with what water he had, that and the temperatures that he was exposed to, that he made it as far as he did.
Jason Rother disappeared last August 30th. He wasn't found until December 4th.
The search for Jason was a terrible ordeal for his family. Some people say they were surprised that any trace of his body was found, likening the Mojave Desert to the surface of the moon.
Jason, through his death, accomplished more than I'm sure I or anybody that I know will in their whole lifetime.
And it was just one routine, day after day. Wherever you went, Jason was there.
Jason's memory continues to haunt a lot of people. Sergeant Al White of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department helped launch the final search, the one that found Jason.
It's amazing that with what water he had, that and the temperatures that he was exposed to, that he made it as far as he did.
Although the desert stretches thousands of square miles, Sergeant White had to gamble that Jason was in his territory.
People will normally shed clothing as they go, and you'll actually be able to follow a trail of discarded clothing. This is where we found his military equipment. His pants were down at the entrance to the wash here, his web gear, his rifle, the grenade launcher that he'd been issued, and canteens.
Jason shed his clothing and gear only 75 yards from where he finally dropped. What is most remarkable is that despite his delirium, despite being in total heat stroke with his internal temperature soaring to as high as 130 degrees, Jason took his military ID card with him to the very end.
The primary predator out here are coyotes, and they will, if they locate a body, they'll use it as a food source, and that's what we believe happened here. To be so close yet so far is somewhat heartbreaking, but to give the family the peace of mind of knowing.
Peace of mind was the last thing Jason's family was getting from the military. The Rothers felt betrayed by the Marines, who had left their boy to die in the desert.
Shock, anger, and then determination to find out what happened.
The Marine Corps is willing to be candid, admit they've made a mistake.
Very hurt. Emotionally, yes, and I still am. At first, I wasn't satisfied with the Corps. I just didn't feel that they were doing what they should have done.
All my friends ask me the same question: how in the world could this happen? How could we leave a man out in the desert like that?
1 month before Jason was found, the Marines flew the family out to the base in California where he was last posted.
welcome out here. There's 29 palms. Mr. Rother, how you doing?
The goal was to try to give the Rothers an idea of what their son was up against and to try to explain why they couldn't find him.
Pointed basically to the northwest. We'll follow this general route as they did.
That was very hard, but that was something we had to do. We rode through the desert, you know, in this convoy in the trucks. We ate the dirt, and we walked on the ground.
The most painful part of the trip, I think, for all of us, was when we were standing on the spot where Jason left the arrow.
Jason had wisely left directional arrows made up of stones along his trail to help a rescue team find him.
We measure a lost person's expectancy in days of survivability. In the desert environment, all over Southern California, Arizona, it's measured in hours.
My feeling at that time was that Jason was not going to be found.
We had a memorial service for him on 26th of November, and 2 weeks later, the remains were found. I just felt like that memorial service was something that had to be done for God to hear us and hear our plea, and please come and help us. And 2 weeks later, we got the answer.
On a cold December morning, back home in Minneapolis, Jason Rother was finally laid to rest.
You could see what the Marine Corps thought of this boy, because a Marine is told they don't cry. And you see these sergeants there, and you can see the water dripping down, and the chins quivering, and that hurt. That was my big hurt.
The best promise that I can give anyone in this case is that we really, as an institution, grieve for Jason Rother, and that we're going to take every step we can to see that something like this never happens again, not in our Marine Corps.
Those at fault are paying the price. 3 Marines are being court-martialed for Jason's death, and the official investigation runs 449 pages.
When any one of us make an error, we have to pay for our error. But why does it have to take a life of a young man?
For Jason's family, it's time for healing, for the anger to give way to pride in Jason's legacy, and for younger brother Bob to decide whether he's going to join the Marines.
I'm not really mad anymore. I have too many other things to think about right now.
I just don't know. I'm just having, I think, a hard time accepting that he's gone, and it's something that should have never been done.
I don't think there's a day that goes by that he's not on my mind. And just kind of, you know, someday the pain will go away, and you'll have just the happy memories.
A horrifying story and quite an investigation.
Well, the Department of Navy certainly took the investigation seriously and were very thorough about it. Notice the thousands of pages that were spent here.
Which ended up in several court-martials. The trials of the 3 Marines have been going on down at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. So far, 2 of them have been convicted of dereliction of duty and demoted.
As for the Rother family, they carry on as best they can. Jason's brother was scheduled to go active this June, and as of now, he hasn't decided whether to go forward with his enlistment.